first. Meanwhile, the high-stakes standoff between Apple and the FBI is heading to the halls of Congress this afternoon, and Apple's general counsel, Bruce Sewell, and FBI Director James Comey are set to testify before the House Judiciary Committee in just about 90 minutes. Joining us now from Capitol Hill, Judiciary Committee member and Ohio Republican Congressman Jim Jordan. Congressman, thanks for being with us.
Good to be with you.
Congressman, we've got news today that a Facebook executive has been arrested in Brazil. Kind of a similar issue to Apple versus FBI. The government there wants access to private messages to do criminal investigations. There's a big issue of will Congress be the ones to set the rules going forward and what happens with encrypted communications. What sort of legislation are you likely to support, keeping in mind that there's a global precedent that you could be setting here?
Yeah, well, look, you have to craft legislation that's consistent with the Constitution, consistent with the Fourth Amendment, and I think, frankly, consistent with the context we find ourselves in. Remember, this government, this administration, targeted conservative groups just a few years ago for a sustained period of time, targeted conservative groups through the IRS, an agency with the power of the IRS. So I think you have to view it all in that context, that framework, and err on the side, it seems to me, of privacy. And that's why I think you see many members who tend to think that Apple's right on this one. We're going to have the hearing today. We'll get information and we'll proceed from there. But I think that's sort of the mindset I see from a lot of my colleagues.
How do you make that argument, Congressman, without appearing to be weak on national security in front of your constituents?
No, look, you want to be strong on national security, but you want to be strong on the Constitution. I think American people understand that. Frankly, respect that. And when you remind Americans of this context, remember we had this Justice Department go after certain reporters, James Rosen, Cheryl Atkinson. We had this IRS systematically and for a sustained period of time target people and understand what the target was. Your most cherished right, your right to speak under the First Amendment, your free speech rights. That's what they went after. And so again, I remind people of that context, that environment, and what the Internal Revenue Service did. And this healthy skepticism I think we have to have when it comes to the federal government having too much power and being able to get to our private papers, our private information, our privacy in general.
Congressman, this could be a nonpartisan issue in the weirdest possible way. I say that because I believe pretty much all of the main GOP candidates for the nomination have come out saying Apple needs to comply with this order, which sort of goes against the privacy thrust that you're articulating here. What needs to happen in order to get a unified message, either from the GOP or from Congress people like yourself who see things the way you do?
No, you're exactly right. These are the kind of issues that typically don't just break down on party lines. I always say in Ohio, this is one where Dennis Kucinich, although he's no longer in Congress, where Dennis Kucinich and Jim Jordan would be on the same page. It's one of those kind of issues. And again, I think it comes back to just the basic read on the Fourth Amendment, the First Amendment, the United States Constitution, and that the fact that Congress should be writing these, not the executive branch coming in and saying, we just want to assert this right, we want to have this right. Congress should weigh in on this, and that's what we're doing starting today with the hearing.
Would this be more difficult to argue if, God forbid, there were some terrorist event tonight, tomorrow? How much are we on that point where if a major event happened, the whole discussion would change?
Look, we need to do all we can to prevent the terrorist acts. That includes security on the border. That includes a robust national defense. That includes looking at the refugee policy and all this. And we've been, I think, taking the right position, the position the American people want on all those issues. But I think we have to, as I've said before, focus on this is Fourth Amendment protections, First Amendment protections, part of the Bill of Rights, part of the Constitution, and we have to give a lot of weight to that. And again, particularly when you think about what we have seen in just the last couple of years from this administration.
Congressman, what is the proper role for technology companies in the situation we find ourselves in, not only with asymmetrical threats, global terrorism, but data and data intelligence proving an increasingly important asset in this global struggle that the United States finds itself in? What role do companies have?
Well, I think Congress has to frame that role and weigh in on that, and that's why you're having the hearing. We got a hearing tomorrow in the Oversight Committee on geolocation. This idea that certain agencies have this capability called Stingray capability, where it mimics a cell phone and makes cell phones bump into that device, and law enforcement can get your cell number, know your location because of using that device. That's an important privacy concern, too. We're having a hearing on that issue tomorrow. And again, this whole area is so broad, and with technology advancing so fast, it's incumbent upon Congress to have these hearings and make decisions and actually potentially pass legislation.
All right. Well, Congressman Jim Jordan from Ohio, showing certainly the many layers of nuance in this issue. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.